Josyp Terelya, an internationally known activist of the Ukrainian Catholic Church and a defender of human rights, a man who had suffered and served more than 23 years in different concentration camps, labor camps and prisons for his Catholic faith, is a witness to the events of Hrushiv, and he himself had been graced to see the Mother of God there in his first visit in May of 1987. Josyp Terelya was born in 1943. He is now 46 years old. He lives in Toronto with his wife Olana and their three children, Mariana, Kalinka, and Paul. Josyp will tell you more of his own story, and he came to Canada in 1987 in October, when he was expatriated by the Soviet authorities. His rights of Soviet citizenship were taken away, and it's only through the intervention of President Mitterrand of France, of President Reagan of the United States, and the Queen of Holland that he was allowed to come into the free world. And then from Holland he made his way to Toronto, where he was welcomed in October of 1987. And in the years of these last 2 years of his presence among us, he has been very active in attending international Catholic congresses and conventions, bearing with him the message of Hrushiv, the message of Medjugorje and Fatima, the message of heaven, the need to convert, and to convey to people, to bring them to an awareness of really what is happening in that part of the world, which has so fallen into the public eye because of the so-called glasnost and perestroika. Ukrainians celebrated the millennium of their Christianity last year, 1988, and the message of Josyp Terelya has helped so considerably to bring an awareness of the real situation, the truth on this matter. With this, I present to you Josyp Terelya.
Я походжу з стародавнього роду наших.
I am of an old stock of Boyko Ukrainian ancestry. My father was a member of the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia. During the war, he was arrested and sentenced. He was detained in concentration camps. I was born at this time. My father escaped from concentration camp, and in Yugoslavia he joined the army of Tito and fought with him. He was wounded in 1944 and taken prisoner and sent to a concentration camp in Wiesbaden and then to Baden-Baden. He was liberated by the American army and began to serve in the American army as a translator. He knew 9 languages: Jewish, French, German, English, Hungarian, Czech, Russian, and Ukrainian. And when my father returned home, he was immediately arrested. Few know now that in Transcarpathian Ukraine, with the Russian occupation, the independent Carpathian Ukrainian state continued to exist, at least on paper. The government was communist, but paradoxically, with the entry of the Russian forces into Carpathian Ukraine, all the communist elements were changed. Practically speaking, a new communist party was formed, who was not in accord with the politics of Stalin, was repressed and liquidated. But my father was freed shortly through the intervention of Tito and assumed the post of head of the Communist Party in the Beskids of the Central Carpathian Mountains. He was also authorized by the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Ukraine for the struggles with bourgeois Ukrainian nationalism. My father was repressed again in 1951, excluded from the party and sentenced to death in the Stalin regime. But as Stalin wanted to make his peace with Marshal Tito, Tito interceded for my father, and my father was released. I did not know who my parents were, though, until I was 12. I was raised by my maternal grandmother, Anna Sophia Fallis. She was a strong Catholic. Our family in general held to the faith very strongly and practically in the 40 years of the Russian occupation. We held strongly with the Church, and not only held strongly, but our family conducted their underground and illegal activity and work for the church. My cousins were repressed. My uncles were imprisoned. They were priests. A cousin was a Brazilian monk. He was repressed by the Czech Communist Party in 1947 in Prague. I myself lived at home until I was 19. I completed polytechnic studies with a diploma as a builder. I went to work in Kiev, and it was here that I met my wife, Olena. She was then a student of the second course at the Medical Institute. In 1949, I entered grade 1. I remembered the first service in the catacombs. It was the first Sunday when the Russians came and took away our churches. Neighbors came to tell us that a priest, my mother's uncle, Father Dionysius Drebitko, a well-known Brazilian monk, would be celebrating. He came in the night. I was doing my best not to fall asleep, to see who would come, but I fell asleep, and I woke only when the people were singing. I was a witness of the first catacomb liturgy, and from that time, 15 years ago, we would gather in the woods to celebrate the liturgy. Here I'm showing you another picture from the times of the perestroika of Gorbachev. It's a mass celebrated in the woods by Bishop Ivan Margitic in these last few years, a Ukrainian Catholic bishop in the Carpathians. Nothing has changed for Ukrainian Catholics. These photos that I'm showing you were taken 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is Father Yaroslav Lasiu, who was in prison and in camps with me for many years. This meeting was organized by the Young Catholic Action. 20 to 30,000 Catholics, boys and girls, gathered at this Mass celebrated by Father Lasiu. And in this picture, you have before you a demonstration, the hunger fast being led by Ivan Khmara and representatives of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. They were joined also by Orthodox faithful, all demanding the legalization of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in the Soviet Union. Undoubtedly, it's difficult to explain to people who have never seen the Soviet Union and don't understand how we are forced to pray in woods and forests. When I completed my studies at the Institute of Building Technology, I was sent to Kiev and began to work. I was already active in the Catholic Church, for from the age of 14 I was active in Catholic Action. I was one of those who renewed the confraternity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the so-called Isusovci. The purpose of the restoration of the worship of the Sacred Heart was the public and common Eucharist for youth. For the women had already been active. We wanted the male youth and male adults, and these would gather together without the women, 1,000 participants at a time, and this was in the 1960s. We would gather to worship the Eucharistic Christ. We held courses and seminars, organized discussions that would conclude with the Last Supper, the Divine Liturgy, the Mass, as in the underground. We would gather in barns, in private homes. We would set up guards, for the Soviets would organize raids by night. The KGB had their informers who often betrayed us. These would be meetings that would end with the Divine Liturgy, the Mass. We would sit at the table, would place bread on the table to be broken, split peas, salt and oil. This was our meal. We prayed together. Then one of the young activists, a boy between 6 and 16, would present a text of scripture from the Gospels. Then all of us would dissect this text, take it apart, trying to apply it to our lives and to our times. In this way, we could form mature and responsible Catholics. Our purpose was not only to preserve the Church, to attend Mass. No. We conducted disputes with Jehovah's Witnesses, with Pentecostals and other non-Catholics. The Russians would finance the underground Protestant groups to destroy the Catholic Church. But when a young Catholic reached the age of 14, 15, he knew, he understood the symbols of faith. He knew why he was a Christian, a Catholic. I want to say that here in the West, there are few who really know their creed, why they are Christians, why they were baptized and continue to be baptized, who Jesus is. I'm speaking about Catholics here. I've met many Catholics in the West who don't understand why they go to church, why they attend Catholic churches. There are those who say you can go to other churches, but we are the true apostolic church, the church which is from Jesus. We are the church that is built on the foundations of Jesus. We can't depart from this or enter into compromises or confessions that call themselves Christian, but that have departed from the apostolic faith. I've often been asked here how I understand ecumenism, how I would want to work in an ecumenical spirit. Yes, I understand ecumenism in the Catholic sense. An ecumenist is a person of one or other faith or rite who so loves Jesus Christ with their whole heart. And I want to add that it's not enough just to love Jesus Christ. We have to obey him. We often forget. There are even priests who call us to the love of Jesus, but they forget to tell us that we have to love Jesus and to obey Jesus. And this is how we formed our youth. And this is how I was taught. When we address the problems of ecumenism, every person who truly receives Jesus Christ and is baptized in one of the rites of the Catholic Church accepts the Catholic faith as the foundation of faith. Such a person is an ecumenist. Such a person truly belongs to Christ. How can we accept a Catholic and a non-Catholic praying in some neutral church, pretending that we are confessing and proclaiming Christ? This is an absurdity. This isn't ecumenism. Ecumenism can only be one, and it's to this that the Mother of God is calling us. I had been a prisoner in various prisons and camps for 23 years and 4 months. When was I first arrested? I was first arrested in 1962. I was 19 then. I was arrested under provocation. I had been conscripted, but I didn't want to enter the army. Then I thought it over, and I presented myself at the recruiting center with the Bible and Gospel in hand. I told them that I will enter the Soviet army, but only to evangelize the Soviet army. The Russians told me to go home. 2 weeks later, they arrested me. I was tried and sentenced to 4 years. But it was 15 years before they finally released me. They kept adding to the sentence that I was serving in the prisons and camps. This was the first time round. My wife had by then completed the medical institute. We had been corresponding with each other for 15 years. And when I returned, we were married. She was already 34. I was 33 then. We were married, but I wasn't free too long, exactly 1 year. They arrested me again, and I was confined to solitary in the Dnipropetrovsk prison for 3 years. I was with the people for another 1.5 years, and then they released me, and I was free for a year. Then I received a year of concentration camp. I completed my sentence, but they didn't want to release me. The issue was December 24th, 1984. I should have been released from the concentration camp. I had served my time, but the release was held up. You can understand my feelings. Here I should be free, but they weren't releasing me from prison, and the camp authorities didn't know what to do with me. The next day, December 25th, I wasn't released yet. I began to demand to know why. They answered, "We don't know." I retorted that I was illegally detained in the concentration camp. I was to be free the day before. They answered, "We don't know." They led me to a neutral section of the camp. Only the supervisors were allowed to enter this area. And there I remained the day until my wife arrived and took me. You now know the rest. In 1962, I had organized the Helsinki Initiative Group, the Committee for the Defense of the Rights of the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Ukraine. This committee took upon itself the defense of all the religious groups in the territory of Ukraine. Some circles tend to portray me as standing up only for the defense of the Catholics, but this isn't true. It was we Catholics who raised our voices in defense of all the religious groups that were being persecuted in the territory of Ukraine, Orthodox and Protestant and Catholic alike. I was often asked why I, as a Catholic, undertook to defend Orthodox and Protestants. And these Orthodox and Protestants never say a word about you. I answered that this was something they would have to answer for themselves. I'm speaking about our own work, and you can see our work. We had raised the masses of people. These last 10 years, the struggle for the legalization of the Church. We didn't transgress the limits defined by the Constitution of the USSR. Our position was that of the Constitution, paragraph 2. There is no Ukrainian Constitution. Ukraine is occupied by a foreign occupying power. We have nothing of our own. They have taken our churches, Catholic and Orthodox, and Russia isn't giving us anything today. And paragraph 52 of the Russian Constitution says, in the Socialist Union, there are no, nor can there be any forbidden religions. On these grounds, we raised a movement for legalization. As long as we were in the underground, we were illegal. No one saw how we prayed in the forests. But when we came out of the catacombs, and began to worship openly, we would continue to pray in the woods. We were persecuted. But during the perestroika of Gorbachev, we were persecuted more than we were in the Stalin period. But the issue is that now we are doing this legally. They fine us, they beat us, they persecute us, they throw us into jail and prisons. And notwithstanding all of this, our protest is legal. The people see what we are doing. I'll show you some pictures later to give the viewers an idea what the persecuted Catholic Church is all about, where the people are being beaten, even now, persecuted, where they don't give us bread, they do not allow us to buy butter for our children. You know, that's a major problem today in the USSR, to be able to buy milk, butter, cream, cheese, long lines, long queues, sugar is rationed, and this at a time when the USSR is crying to the world that theirs is the best social system and the richest state. Our group, that is the group for the defense of the rights of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, was formed in 1982, and I was arrested that same year in December. They arrested me again on December the 26th and kept me until 1983, and in 1984, 14 days after my release, we began publishing the Chronicles of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. The first initiatory group was composed of myself as chairman, an old monk, Father Gregory Budzinski, a woman faithful, Stefania Petrash Sichko, who has been with me in good and bad times. Then there was Vasil Kobrin, Father Peter Zelenyuk, and my wife Ulana, and one other person whose name I can't reveal even now. For we don't have that perestroika in the Soviet Union which would permit us to speak openly. I was arrested a year and 4 months later, in 1985, and they condemned me in their provincial tribunals to 12 years of prison. Until this time I had been detained in better and worse prisons. But these last 2 years in the camps of the Perm regions were something horrible. I was never allowed to leave solitary confinement. The prisoners were beaten unconscious, and were it not for the events that developed in Western Europe in 1987, I wouldn't be with you today, because it's in this period that the following were killed in that camp: Valery Marchenko, Metrchan Iskhan, an Armenian, Oleksa Tikhi, Yuri Litvin. The last victim was Slavko Pushkar, when I had already been released. He was my compatriot from Carpathian Ukraine. He had been an officer of the Russian army and a military instructor for the Korean army. They had accused him of spying for North Korea, and he was given 15 years, and then they killed him. When I was released, I immediately set myself to work again. I began collecting signatures for the liquidation of the nuclear stations in Ukraine. I've shown you these 16mm documentary films of my work in collecting signatures in the woods by night in Zarvanitsia. These were the first signatures collected in Ukraine against these nuclear power stations. This movement for renewal began April 26, 1986. The first Chernobyl explosion took place that day at dawn, about 5 a.m. And I want to say that no one paid attention to us and to this fact. It was only the old monks that understood, that paid attention, because they had studied the Apocalypse of St. John the Evangelist, where Chernobyl, bitter root, is expressly mentioned. April 26, 1987, the Church of the Three Saints, that is the Church of the Blessed Trinity in Hrushiv. And this is the church that I'm showing you now in this picture. Here you see the interior of the church, the well with miraculous healing water, and this is where the cross stood, where I would stand and preach. And this is me preaching. The Mother of God appeared to Ukraine about 5 a.m. over that same church above this dome. I didn't want to go to Hrushiv initially. I came to Hrushiv on May 9th. The Russians were spreading rumors in their press that it was I who had organized this religious manifestation, following the directives of the Vatican. They accused me of being a spy of the Vatican, a spy of the American CIA, and they said that I had performed these miracles in the Marian year. You know, this is absurd. For Catholic, miracles aren't really necessary. We don't believe in miracles. We believe in Jesus Christ. And in the Catholic Church, we don't need miracles to confirm the truth of the Catholic Church. Our church does not acknowledge miracles as such, even though we believe and accept miracles. The fact that the Mother of God at times comes to earth to admonish us to convert, this isn't a miracle. This is a norm, the law of life according to God's plan. The Mother of God has come with one and only purpose, to call us to repent and to change our ways, that people might begin to love Jesus Christ truly and to obey Him. We must obey God. It's not enough to say, I love God. How can you love God when you don't obey Him? How can one claim to be a Christian? People who have been married 5 or 6 times and claim to and pretend to positions of leadership in this or that country. This is absurd. A person who doesn't live a Christian life can't pretend that society will respect them. It's only someone who gives a good example of their lives, so that the younger generations can truly see that here is a person of moral strength. It's difficult to be a moral person in our world. People often ask me, is Satan working in the Soviet Union? But this is absurd. Satan is everywhere. Today the world is dominated by Satan. It's not that the communist regime of Gottwald in Czechoslovakia, Stalin in Russia, Tito in Yugoslavia. No. The entire world, America, Portugal, Italy, the USSR, everywhere you'll find Satan. Everywhere we are finding a decline of faith, abortions that are mounting. There's nothing worse than abortion. And yet no one stops to consider how easily mothers kill their own children. Why has this happened? Only because the governments that are ruling their states fail to remember that a young mother deliberately murdering her child. This is deliberate murder. People are pushed by various and different forces, economic, political. For example, in China, they can't give birth to children officially. They have to undergo surgical interventions. This is a crime. And yet no one stops to think of this. No one is paying attention to the fact that this unprotected life, this small life that cannot provide for itself because it cannot yet speak for itself. And the Mother of God has come to us in Europe, but not only in Europe, but throughout the entire world, to Africa, to America, Japan, Medjugorje. The first time that Josyp saw the Blessed Mother was when he was in prison in February of 1972. He was thrown into the isolation. The Soviets would freeze the room, and they would throw the detainee, the prisoner, into the room. Anybody with a weak heart, you would freeze in that room by morning. He was thrown into this freezing room. He began to feel the intense pain that he was freezing. The roots of his hair was paining him. There was a lamp burning in the room. He climbed up the screen and warmed his head to that lamp. The supervisor peeked through the keyhole and he saw that Josyp was doing this, and he turned the light off. 10 minutes, Josyp was so cold he couldn't move. His lips weren't opening.
Розум мене все розумів, я розумом все розумів, але вже я не міг ні рухатися, нічого.
He could understand everything, but he couldn't move his limbs.
І я ліг на ліжку.
He lay on the bed.
І в цей час, коли у мене повіки впали,
and when the eyelids closed,
я чув, що мені на долоня впала тепла жіноча долоня, яка пахла молоком.
He felt that the touch of a woman's hand, warm, that scented with the scent of milk.
Мені стало тепло.
He became warm.
Я відчув, що в камері тепло.
He felt that the whole room was being warm.
Я подумав, що це у мене почалися галюцинації.
He thought he was
Я замерзаю,
hallucinating. He
помираю.
was freezing and dying.
І тоді я почув голос.
And I heard the voice.
Ти мене кликав, я до тебе прийшла.
You called upon me and I have come to you.
Ти не віриш, що це я.
You don't believe that this is I.
І рука відсторонилася, і я перед собою побачив так, як ваша жінка, молоду жінку.
The hand was raised from his eyes and he saw before him the person of a young woman, just as he sees you now, Mary.
Я хочу сказати, що я всього бачив 6 разів в житті Божу Матір.
He saw the Blessed Mother 6 times in his
7
lifetime.
разів. 6 разів у Hrushivi
6 times in Hrushiv
і 1 раз у тюрмі.
and this time in prison.
Я ні разу не бачив волосся, я все бачив її покритою.
He never saw her hair. Her hair was always covered with a veil.
Так було і перший раз.
This was also the first time.
Вона мені сказала, ти з тюрми не звільнишся.
She told him, you won't be freed from prison.
Ти пройшов тільки половина путі.
You've only gone through half of your...
Не бійся, я буду з тобою.
Fear not, I will be always with you.
Я встав.
He rose
Почав ходити.
and began to walk.
Мені було дуже жарко, я зняв сорочку.
It was very hot and he
Я
took the
ходив у
shirt
одній
off.
майці.
He had only the undershirt on.
Вони дивилися у то і були всі заскочені.
They were looking, the KGB were watching through this peephole.
Зайшли офіцери КГБ у полушубках, у дубльонках.
They came into the room with their fur coats and the fur
В
hats
камері
on.
так було холодно, що стіна отак дзвеніла від морозу.
The room was
У
so
2 пальці
cold.
було як лід наросло.
The room was so cold there was ice had formed on the walls of the prison, and if you struck it with it, everything would ring.
Перше, що було, вони кинулися мене мацати голову.
They began feeling him with their hands.
Лікарка сказала, він, видно, зійшов з розуму і в нього щось там сталося.
The woman doctor that came assisting them said he must have gone out of his mind and something must be happening to him organically.
На другий день приїхали лікарі з Москви. Всім було чудно, чому я не замерз.
The next day, the doctors from Moscow came in and they couldn't understand why Josyp hadn't frozen to death.
Вже ніхто не скривав то, що я повинен був у камері замерзнути.
Nobody held.
Їх це вже не цікаво. Їх цікавило, чому я був теплий, ходив, мене тіло було досить гаряче.
Nobody concealed the fact now that he was supposed to have frozen to death. They couldn't understand how it was that he was alive and his whole body was warm.
Тоді КГБ сказало, що Терелya займався йогою і він системою внушення, що я сам собі внушив, що я...
The KGB leaked out that Josyp was practicing yoga and using these yoga techniques, he kept his body warm and his blood circulating.
Лікарі говорять абсурд, йога тут не могла допомогти, він повинен був по наших медичних усіх обслідувань, він повинен був померти, замерзнути.
The doctors denied this. It's impossible, even with yoga techniques, the man should have died by morning.
Мені повірила тільки одна лікарка.
There was only the woman doctor that believed him.
Вона нині католичка.
She's now a
Вона
Catholic.
увірила.
She believed.
Вона зі мною найбільше розмовляла.
She spoke at considerable length with Josyp.
Я їм сказав, що до мене прийшла Божа Мати, і мене Божа Мати спасла.
He told her that the Mother of God had come to her and it was the Mother of God that saved him. Josyp was then interviewed by the chief psychiatrist, the Dr. General Long. And he said, Lunz. And Josyp, he says, we know you're a religious fanatic, but explain to us what method of yoga did you use to prevent yourself from freezing?
Я говорю, я бачив Божу Мати, і я вам свідчу то, що є.
He repeated to him, I've seen the Mother of God and I'm witnessing what I've seen.
Мене відразу відокремили від усіх в'язнів.
He was then isolated from all the other prisoners.
Мене тримали півроку в тюрмі. Мене не звільнили на волю. Я вам хочу сказати, що пророцтво Божої Матері повністю зі сповнено. Мене не звільнили.
He wasn't freed from prison, and here the prophecy, the word spoken by the Mother of God, that told him that he would not be free was fulfilled.
Полковник Виноградов говорив, якщо ми його випустимо тепер на волю, цей факт фанатики, католики піднімуть, з нього будуть робити святого, на волю його не можна випускати. Він буде про це говорити.
One of the colonels says, we can't release Josyp because if we release him, everybody will say that Josyp is a miracle worker and all the fanatics will believe him. We can't let him go.
Я писав вірші, і мені знову за мої вірші, що я писав у тюремних камерах, відновляють справу і відбувається суд, і мене не звільняють.
He was also a poet, he wrote his verses, and then there was a new trial set up, and then Josyp was resentenced again because of these verses. He wasn't allowed to leave.
Через місяць мене вивезли у Лефортово і повезли у інститут імені Сербського, де провадили психіатричні експертизи.
And a month later was taken to another prison, Lefortovo, where they conducted psychiatric examinations on him.
Генерал Лунц, професор Тальце, академік Сніжневський, мене коли завели до них в кабінет, мені сказали, от скажи ти нам, чому ти такий впертий? Відмовся, що ти бачив Божу Матір, і ти їдеш додому, ти не говори це ні до. Ми тебе повинні тепер експертизу робити. Що з тобою робити? Ти нам поможи.
These specialists, the professors, and Dr. General Lunz, the doctor, turned to
Professor
him.
Тальце.
He says, Josyp, look, tell us that you're renouncing, that you didn't see the Mother of God. You should be going home and we'll release you.
Професор Тальце мені задає запитання. Ви вірите в те, що Божа Мати непорочно родилася і непорочно породила Ісуса?
Professor Taicher asked him, do you believe that Mary was immaculately conceived and immaculately gave birth to Christ?
Я говорю, я на такі провокативні питання відмовляюся відповідати.
Josyp answered, I'm not going to answer these provocative questions.
Вона говорить, цього досить, щоб вас признати психічно ненормальним.
This is enough, she said, to declare you unbalanced and psychically abnormal.
Ви говорите, ви ж біологію вчили в школі.
So you taught biology in school?
Я говорю, так вчив.
Yes, I
Ви знаєте, як твориться клітка?
You know how
Що таке сперма, сперматозоїд?
how the cells unite and bring life.
І ви, говорить, хочете заперечити, що людина запліднюється і народжується в лоні матері.
You want to deny this whole process of natural birth, that a child is conceived in the womb of the mother, and then through that process of gestation is brought to birth.
Я сказав, що ні, я цього не заперечую, тому що дійсно люди так народжуються. Але Бог не так народився. Бог не є людина.
He says, I'm not denying that. This is how people are born. Well, that's not how God was born. God is not.
Вона сказала, ідіть і подумайте. Від вашої відповіді буде залежати ваша доля.
So think it over. Your fate depends upon your answer.
І мене визнали психічно ненормальним.
He was declared to be psychologically or mentally unbalanced.
Вона сказала, ми вас будемо лікувати до того часу, поки ви не забудете свого Бога.
We're going to treat you until you forget your God. There was a press conference room with 250 psychiatrists in the Sepsky Institute. The academic Shnizeski and Lieutenant General Morozov, the director of the Sepsky Institute, General Lunz, Professor Taitse and his wife. All the luminaries, the big names were there. And I told them that not one strand of my hair would fall from my head. I won't take one tablet, not 1 gram of medicine, and you won't do anything to me. They said, we'll see. And God gave me this. The Mother of God looked after me in the 3 years that I was detained in the psychiatric institution, and they didn't give me 1 tablet, 1 medicine. Isn't that a miracle? How can you explain this? I was taken there to be beaten, to be killed by tranquilizers and neuroleptics. The doctors were angry with me. There were moments when the KGB interceded for me, but they couldn't force medicines upon me. When I was finally released in 1987 under Gorbachev, I came home and immediately again began the work of collecting signatures against the atomic electrical reactors in Ukraine. But with the apparitions, I was in a dilemma. Should I go to Hrushiv or not? Because the newspapers were already writing, and in the discussions were saying that this was my work. That fanatic had come up with a miracle, as if I had, say, made projection with a projector, and it was making itself seen even here. It's a wonder that this miracle continues even after I have left. I've been outside the Soviet Union for more than 2 years, but the apparitions continue in Hrushiv. When I came, I was deeply disturbed. I believed that I wouldn't see her. This is the feeling I had. It's as though I wasn't real, as if I had come from some other planet. I couldn't explain. It was night. The light was seen from afar. It was so bright you could see a needle. It wasn't the light of day, nor was it the light of night. You couldn't say that it was nighttime. I saw her then, as I see you. I felt I wanted to reach out and touch her. I felt that I could touch her. And together with this, I spoke to others who were there, and there was this sense of peace. The people were so filled with peace. They were so good, enlightened. There were women there who were not all that comely by nature. I saw them later. They were quite homely. But to see them then, at that time, when the Mother of God was there, they were lovely, they were beautiful. Light shone from the tips of our fingers. The leaves on the trees gave out light. Everything was electrified, suffused in that light, that all who were there were so united among themselves. There were very many people. It was before dawn. Masses of people were already assembled when Josyp came. I was there from May 9th to May 12th. I met with a filming crew from Moscow. I'll show you later the newspaper so you can read for yourself what they were writing. They were with me, and the Russian woman exclaimed, I can't understand what's happening. Here I came to write an article, but I can't write that I also saw the Mother of God. I'm often asked, what did the Mother of God say? How did she speak? I wouldn't call these visions. People are mistaken. Visions are hallucinations. These weren't visions. It's not correct to call them visions. It was the living Mother of God. It was a living woman who spoke to us. Her face was alive. All the people saw her. I saw her. Others saw her. We not only saw her, we also heard her. Some people would hear one thing, others something else. But basically, when the Mother of God turned to us, she spoke to everyone. There are some things that I can't reveal to anyone for very special reasons. I have written them down, but I'm not showing them to anyone. When I complete my book, they will all be published. That is, those things that I can reveal. What pertains to me individually, I won't include this. When the Mother of God spoke to me, I heard her voice. I hear her voice even now. And she began to speak. My daughter, Ukraine, I have come to you. It's with these same words that the Mother of God addressed herself to Ukraine in 1954 in Terelya, in western Ukraine, exactly 100 years after the apparitions of Lourdes. On December 22nd, 1954, on the mountain in Terelya, the Mother of God appeared. And she said then, my daughter Ukraine, I have come to you. You are the most enslaved. You are the one that has suffered most for the faith of Christ. I have come to you. She repeated this in Hrushiv. Hrushiv is the complement and fulfillment of Fatima. For in Fatima, the Mother of God said, if Russia is not converted to Christ the King, the Third World War is inevitable. And when she was speaking, we were about 52,000 people. We can't imagine how many people there were really there. We took an estimate. We counted 52,000 because there were 52,000 embroidered towels. And we don't know how many people came without these embroidered towels. It's really hard to imagine how many people were truly there that day. But what's interesting is that so many Jews were converted that day. People had come. They didn't know how to make the sign of the cross. Some people were saying that they were converted because they were looking to get aid from us. But they didn't know us, nor we them. They came from Moscow, Russia. These people never knew how to make the sign of the cross. They didn't know what Orthodoxy was, what Catholicism was. But what they saw there, what they experienced, we all saw the Mother of God. And I want to underline that it was those who came, not with the purpose of seeing of the Mother of God, but who came on a pilgrimage to pray to the Mother of God, that saw the Mother of God. Adults saw her, children saw her, all the children saw her. People who came looking for a miracle, some saw the light, others saw a shining cross, some heard a voice, but they didn't see her. And this confirms that the Mother of God comes only to those who need her. Those who went there not looking or coming with the intent of seeing the Mother of God, but came to pray. And we prayed the rosary incessantly. The rosary recited 24 hours a day around the clock. One group would end, another began. And with this, we also made the great mission retreat during the rosary. The Mother of God seemed to be speaking to each of us directly. I am often asked, how did you hear her voice? I want to tell you that this phenomenon confirms that this was truly the Mother of God. This was no mass hallucination or mass psychosis. Why not? When I looked at the Mother of God, she looked me into my eyes. When you are looking at me in my eyes, I see only your eyes. But those that were there, she looked each one in the eyes, and they looked into her eyes. How is this possible if this were a hallucination? This wasn't a vision. People saw a living woman. Some saw her in a flaming dress, others saw her in a white garb. I later also saw her in the white garb, but I saw her 3 times dressed in this flaming dress.
над тим моментом, що там це відбувало. Це не була просто об'ява, що люди бачили яку молоденьку.
Her face was clean white, that of a young woman of 1820, very beautiful and pleasant. I wouldn't say that it was a natural beauty, but she was beautiful with a beauty that can't be described. She asked us to pray, that we teach the children to pray, that we teach the children to pray the rosary, that we pray constantly for the deceased. The Mother of God in Hrushiv constantly enjoined upon us to pray for the deceased, for the dead, for those that have been killed, for Christians who forget the dead, those that have fallen and don't pray for them are bad Christians. Every Christian must never forget to pray for the dead, for this is the precondition for entering on the path of love. This is our duty. Secondly, the Mother of God underlined that we convert the unbelievers, that we work among the unbelievers. There's no need to do propaganda among ourselves. We have to go out among the unbelievers, to go to those who don't believe in God. Again, I am often asked, who are the unbelievers? All those who do not stand firmly upon the traditions and the foundations that Christ Jesus himself established. If people have not entered into a relationship with Jesus, even though they call themselves a Christian church, they aren't Christians. We often hear people say, he's a Christian Baptist or such other Christian. But this is all human work. Our church was founded by Jesus, and the Protestant church was founded by Luther, and that's the great difference. People don't understand this. I'm not against them. I've always helped them. I have always given witness for these people. But we Catholics must follow a truly authentic ecumenism. Our apostolate among the unbelievers is to work with them that they come back to Christ. The thought occurred to me as I was listening to the Mother of God, what language was she speaking? It's hard to understand that we were listening to a living voice. They asked me, well, how do you hear her voice? I felt that the voice surrounded me, and as if it came from within. But the cadences of the voice would rise and fall as radio waves. On May 11th, when I was there, the Mother of God spoke at length about conversions, and that we should pray and do penance for unbelievers. May 12th, I was with the official Russian group. We were televised. This was the official group from Moscow, and it was the official group from Moscow on the Central TV of Ukraine in Moscow, and the Literary Gazette. I engaged them in conversation and discussion, and they later wrote of this in the newspapers. A correspondent came up to me. There was a group of students there, about 100, and they came to the students and asked them, why have you come here? Why aren't you studying? They answered, we're students from the State Institute in Dnipropetrovsk. And the woman correspondent asked, and you've traveled 3,000 kilometers to come here? Why? Why did you leave your studies? Who are you? Are you Komsomol youth? Yes, they answered, we're Komsomol youth. Why have the Komsomol youth come here? The Uniates are making miracles here. And they answered, we came here to see the Mother of God. But you belong to the Komsomol, they said, and yet you believe this? And one of the students answered, yes, I saw the Mother of God. How then? Are you going to continue in the Komsomol? And he answered, no. I will no longer belong to the Komsomol. You know, such things are taking place before our eyes. And there was also this instance. The Russians wanted to cut down the tree so that the tree would fall across the road to prevent the cars from coming. A strong wind rose up, and when the tree was almost sawed through, the wind stopped. The tree began to topple and fall towards the ground, and in a moment, the wind rose again. The tree straightened itself and then fell directly on the cars of the militia. This happened in a matter of seconds, and I saw this with my own eyes. The young militia that was standing there were filled with revulsion. And one of them took off his hat, threw it aside, I went towards the church. No one could stop the people. All the officers who were there had signed declarations that they would not make known, that they wouldn't divulge what they had seen in Hrushiv. I asked, if this is mass hallucination, mass psychosis, then why have these people, the communists, the official representatives, signed these declarations that they wouldn't divulge what they had seen? If all this is lies, if all this is hallucinating, then how can one arrange for everyone to have one and the same hallucination? This is impossible. You won't find a psychological idiot that will claim to see one and the same hallucination. Everyone has his own hallucinating. On May 12th, the Mother of God spoke at length. I heard these words, I came to you because the people here are devout, and devout people will spread the news of me everywhere. I know best where I am to go. I go where it is better for my son. And later I asked many of the people, why did the Mother of God come here? And you know, tens of thousands of those present had this same thought in mind. Why had she come here? Why to Hrushiv? And the Mother of God answered us. The people were asking themselves mentally why she had come here, why she didn't go to Moscow or somewhere else. She came to the place where there are devout people. People often disagree with me, but I want to say, let's just imagine that the Mother of God appeared to atheists, unbelievers. What do you think? Would the atheists or unbelievers spread the truth about the Mother of God? Would they acknowledge that they had seen something? They would be frightened and would say nothing to others but keep this a secret. That's why the Mother of God comes only to those places where there are very devout people. Earth and heaven are united as a child with its mother. You are the children and heaven is the Father, God. The Mother of God comes where she is needed. From Hrushiv, the devout people took their staffs and went everywhere throughout the Soviet Union, all the way to Ostrova Sakhalina. You can imagine how I wept when on May 15th, people came all the way from Ostrova Sakhalina, 14,000 kilometers from the other end of Russia. They came to bow down before the Mother of God and to pray. And most of them didn't know how to pray. They didn't know the Our Father. They didn't know the Creed. They didn't know the Hail Mary. Hail Mother of God. Here they learned to pray, and they returned Catholics. The Russians threw me out of the country to destroy me. How? As with every immigrant, they believed that immigrant life would swallow me up and I would disappear. But look, in the 2 years the Mother of God has been giving me, and it was said to me, don't think of what you're to do, don't fret about this. Go tell the people, and the people who need you will find you, and you will find them. Don't worry about this, don't doubt, for I am always with you. We have to go forth and speak and labor. I was a witness when the Mother of God was present at the Eucharist during the Divine Liturgy, the Mass. The Divine Liturgy was celebrated at Hrushiv non-stop. Here in this picture, you see the priest celebrating Mass at Hrushiv. The Mother of God was standing above us, and she took part in the Divine Liturgy, and this was something unusual. It wasn't Terelya alone who saw her. No, there were tens of thousands of people who saw her. The phenomenon of Hrushiv is this. Tens of thousands of people who saw her, and so many heard her. And the Mother of God spoke to us, and speaking to us, she admonished us and interceded for us. She prays for us constantly. After Hrushiv, there were 13 more apparitions in Ukraine. There were 14 in all. The Hrushiv apparitions are still taking place. Are they going on now? Yes. There are some who say that when the church in Hrushiv was handed over to the Russian Orthodox Church, the apparitions stopped. This isn't true. Those who don't believe in God are saying this. To say that the Mother of God appeared only to Catholics is also not true. The Mother of God appeared to everyone. She appeared to them that they might convert, that they may change their ways. On May 12th, the Mother of God said this to me: "Do you love life? Are you always walking the road of life? But you're very disturbed." She had told me this so many times. You're not at peace with yourself. You want to do everything all at once and to convert everyone to my Son. But only those shall convert who possess, have, and understand love. Do penance. Make peace with your shortcomings. Be at peace, because you're not at peace. You are filled with fear and apprehension. You know what is going to happen. But it's impossible to avert this now. The Mother of God said that these things would take place. She saw into the future. She looked ahead. And she said that if people don't accept Christ the King, there will be war. The very air shall be on fire. Water will evaporate, and even the air will burn. There shall be a great fire, a great conflagration, she said. I see fire. The villages are burning. The water is burning. The air is on fire. Everything is in flames. When I begin to speak, and I come to these moments, look at my hands. It's as though ants were crawling all over them. When I was speaking with you until now, I didn't feel this. But now everything is pulsating in my hands. And this happens every time when I speak of what she said. And after this, I become very ill. When I just tell a story, nothing happens. But afterwards, when I begin to speak, I don't know where it comes from, but my entire body begins to perspire, as though I were charged with electricity, pulsing through my whole body, and especially my hands become numb. How do the apparitions of the Mother of God take place in other places, in the same fashion? It often happens that as people are praying, and of a sudden, a nun or a woman is walking among them. It's only when she leaves that the people become aware of who it was that was among them. It's then given them to understand when she has already left. And there were so many sick among those present, and people became well. And she spoke, and she told the people to believe, to accept their sufferings, to love one another, to make their peace with each other. And I'm speaking of events that are taking place daily. If people sin, we're always sinning. At times, I would stop to think, to ask myself, but what language is she speaking? There were so many different peoples, and they all heard her. There were Russians, Georgians, and they all heard the same message in their own language. I've studied the empirical sciences, biology, genetics, cytology. I'm interested in so many things. Yet when I stopped to analyze everything, I understood her in Ukrainian, but at the same time she was speaking to all of us. And there were Georgians there, Armenians, and they heard her in their own tongue. What does that mean? Is this a translation? What can it be? It's difficult for us to grasp this with our human mind. We can only understand one thing. We have to believe and pray and change our lives. The Mother of God is saying, offer up of your well-being, your life, your peace. After original sin, sacrifice is the principal law for mankind. And this is what Christ the King proclaimed. Remember that sin is forbidden pleasure. The Mother of God says so much about this. Each one of you must take part sincerely in the sufferings of Jesus. By this will you redeem those who have fallen into sin. Don't doubt of this. Don't fear, but pray, and pray constantly. Publicly acknowledge Jesus. Don't be ashamed to make the sign of the cross, and prepare yourself for great persecutions and for new sacrifices. And only the Mother of God directs all of this. Take a look at the events in the Philippines. Yet really few know what happened in the Philippines. The Catholics came out into the square in mass, and not one soldier fired his rifle. That's a fact. I believe that the Mother of God was there, And remember what I said earlier. The time shall come when the Mother of God will act in like fashion in the Soviet Union. Not one soldier will fire. The people will pass by. All the divisions will pass. The fact that there were communists who shot and killed, all this will be a thing of the past. And people will then turn a new page of their lives. And with this shall begin the progressive renewal of mankind. I believe this, and it's still to come. None of the political groups that are making a lot of noise will ever achieve anything. Nothing will come of all their activity. Only what God does will remain. Remember His words. Whatever is not built not in His name will not be built by Him. Where you build in my name, there will be truth. And this is what will happen in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine. The Mother of God says that Ukraine will be an independent state in the next 10 years. This is a fact. Remember my words. Who doesn't believe this, doesn't believe the Bible, doesn't believe Christ the King. When I met the Holy Father, the first thing that the Pope had asked me was, how is your wife? How are your children? How did they fare when you were in prison? I had a 43-minute audience with the Holy Father, and there was no one else present. Then the secretary, Father Sebastian, came in. He was my contact person. And I'm in contact with the Holy Father, with the Pope even now. We have a close, ongoing relationship. I hope to be in Rome this fall, and I hope to speak about Fatima and Hrushiv, and I will tell the Pope that now is the time to consecrate Russia to the Mother of God, to her Immaculate Heart. I had been fortunate to receive Holy Communion from his hands during the celebration of our Ukrainian millennium. There will be great changes in Central Europe. Great changes will take place not because of Gorbachev and President Bush, but thanks to these people, the hunger strikers at the Arbat in Moscow. These people are praying, they are striking, they are demonstrating. On September 17th, these people came out with Daush with Sherbitsky. And yesterday we heard that the General Secretary of the Communist Party in Ukraine was demoted because of the readiness for sacrifice of these people. These changes will take place in Central Europe and the Soviet Union. We will have an independent Baltic states, an independent Russia, independent Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia. This independence will be built upon the truth of the gospel. We are still suffering. Gorbachev is threatening that he will not give freedom to these peoples. But this does not depend on Gorbachev. If Russia is to be respected by other nations, it will have to grant independence to these peoples. As long as Russia continues to dominate over other nations, there can be no talk of justice. And where there is no justice, there is no peace. The Mother of God is calling us to peace. Peace will come through justice, and not because of the General Secretary of the Communist Party. He will do many things which he himself opposes. The other day he said on television that he will give no freedom to the Baltic states or to Ukraine. In a month he won't be saying this, and in half a year he'll be saying something totally different. I believe that we shall see great changes in the world, and you will see these changes in Canada and the USA. But unfortunately here in Canada and the USA, the faith is diminishing. The history of the appearances of the Blessed Mother go back many centuries. The church in the village of Hrushiv near Drohobych is one of many such shrines dedicated to the Mother of God in Western Ukraine. During the wars of Bogdan Khmelnytsky with the Polish crown in the 1600s, the Virgin Mary appeared over the spot where the present chapel now stands. The people planted a willow tree to commemorate this event at the place of the apparition. At the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th, a spring of clear water appeared at the foot of the willow. People from the surrounding villages would come to take water for their various ailments, and its renown spread far beyond the borders of Galicia. In 1806, the villagers placed an icon of the Virgin Mary on the willow, an icon painted that same year by Stepan Chapovsky. They often gathered here for prayer, offering votive candles and celebrations in honor of the Virgin Mary. This was not to the liking of the current owners and the administrators of the property, and these decided to put a stop to the meetings. The owners bribed a scoundrel, a non-believer, Justin Kina, to destroy the fence around the willow about 1840. He heaped his rubbish and the rotten fruit in the spring of 1840 around the willow in the spring, and the entire Kina family suddenly perished shortly thereafter. An epidemic of cholera spread throughout the village, killing many of the inhabitants from the surrounding area and of the village itself. A woman from the village had a dream in which she saw the Mother of God, who told her, "My daughter, the earth is waiting for you as well, but I want you to live. I beg you, clean the desecrated well, have the Mass celebrated to our Lord, and death in the village will cease." The people gathered in the village square. They took what implements they had and went to the well, and as had been promised, the cholera disappeared from the village when they had fulfilled their request. The people bought this well from the owners and built a chapel around the well. This was in 1856. The church was consecrated by the village priest, Father Klicevich, with 5 other priests, and dedicated to the Blessed Trinity, because the people had seen 3 candles burning over the well. 22 years later, the chapel was renovated and reconstructed. This new church, the one that is still standing to this day, was dedicated on June 2nd, 1878, by the parish priest, Father Ivan Kostensky. An iconostasis was erected in 1883, and walls were painted with murals. The church was rededicated by Monsignor Ivan Wojtowicz on August 27, 1901, the feast of the Assumption or Dormition of the Blessed Virgin Mary, according to the Julian calendar. Bishop Konstantin Chekhovich issued a decree with the authorization of the Holy See, granting a plenary indulgence according to the customary norms of the Church. Why did the Blessed Mother appear here in Hrushiv? This place of grace was closed again and abandoned with the coming of the Russians in 1946. No one had access to it. A 12-year-old girl, Maria Kyzin, on her way to school saw a strange light over the church, and in that light she saw a figure of a woman with an infant in arms above the balcony of the Hrushiv church. The apparition did not disappear, and the child ran back to her mother, Miroslava, and told her what she had seen. The mother told the girl to be calm, to say a prayer, and to begin off again to school. The daughter insisted that the mother come and see for herself. This was easily done, for the church could be seen clearly from the garden. She looked in the direction which Marina was pointing, and the mother was astonished to see a woman with infant in her arms above the church balcony. She turned to her daughter and said, "Kneel and pray, it is she." After this, the devout woman went to her close friends to tell them what she had seen. The news shook the village folk. By evening, the people from Drohobych knew. A day later, the entire region was talking about the apparition of the Mother of God. It was April 26, 1987, the anniversary of the nuclear tragedy of Chernobyl, to the day and the hour that the Mother of God appeared. She asked the child to enter the church. Marina answered, "I can't, the door is locked." Mary responded, "There's nothing locked for me." And it's to this abandoned church that Mary came. And often the devout pilgrims who came to the church would see the Mother of God through the keyhole, praying before the altar, interceding for the people, and the entire church illuminated. It was from this day that endless pilgrimages began from the outlying areas, from Ukraine, from the entire Soviet Union, notwithstanding the many attempts of the authorities to keep the people away. The Catholic services were celebrated in the open air before the church. In July of 1988, the authorities took over the church and established a Russian Orthodox priest in a Russian Orthodox parish. Yet notwithstanding all these attempts, the Mother of God continues to appear to the devout who seek divine assistance through her intercession. Josyp Terelya first learned of the apparitions on April 29, 1987. As it turned out, he wasn't able to go to Hrushiv immediately for several reasons. It was May 9, 1987, when he finally arrived in Hrushiv. Deep down, he believed the story of the people, that this was true. This mysterious apparition of the mother on the anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster was for him a sign of the times foretold by the prophets. He couldn't sleep that night. Next day he went to see a priest friend, the provincial superior of the Basilian Fathers, and told him everything that he had heard. They talked at length, discussing the pros and cons of the incident, and finally concluded that they had to see for themselves. But going to Hrushiv might make it look that our church had some interest in this, especially as Josyp was under constant surveillance of the KGB following his release. They could use this visit for their propaganda against the Ukrainian Catholic Church. In the end, Josyp decided to go. He was convinced that the KGB would not dare arrest him after his release by decree of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR. He made his decision. A detachment of the underground Ukrainian National Liberation Front chose 10 young men who had completed their military service in the Russian army to accompany Josyp. And they arrived in the village of Hrushiv on May 9th. The Mother of God is continuing to appear in Hrushiv to the present day. She no longer appears to the masses as she had in the first months of her apparition in 1987. She appears to the innocent children almost always. And as devout pilgrims come to pray for their needs, people who come not out of curiosity, but seeking divine help through her prayers and assistance, she appears to them dressed in the garb of a nun or an elderly woman, but the people become aware of her presence only when she has disappeared. The Church has been unable to conduct an appropriate canonical investigation of the authenticity of these events, and the local bishops until the present have not yet made any public statements. This is the personal witness of Josyp Terelya, and as in all such events, it is submitted to the ultimate judgment of the Church, which is alone competent to make a declaration of the authenticity of the events of heaven.